Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. Hey, very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined this week by Danny O'Brien and Simon Stokes. It's our kind of final NFL podcast series episode. Lads, how are things?
Good now.
Good, Mark.
Good stuff. I suppose the Super Bowl's ended. We will reflect on Kansas City Chiefs 25-22 overtime win over San Francisco 49ers. We'll also have a look at the Irish NFL Combine hopefuls, how they're getting on. We'll also look at some free agents, particularly the quarterback position, and also get the lads' opinion on the season that was. I suppose, Danny, we'll start with yourself. The 25-22 win by Kansas City Chiefs, maybe slow to get going, but certainly plenty of drama, particularly in the fourth quarter and in overtime. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Dave, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Like that first half was pretty, like if you're looking for a free-flowing game, it sure as hell was not that. But things definitely did pick up. But like you're looking at it going, like it backs up what we mentioned before, and the amount of people I just say who I was chatting with beforehand. Okay, so you can never back against Patrick Mahomes. But my God, do the 49ers have a lot of regrets. I've lost, you could have just, it's almost like a laundry list of regrets they have from the point of view of, again, they had the Super Bowl within their grasps, and I'm seeing people kind of going and highlighting the fact is Shanahan cursed at this stage because it seems no matter what they do, something invariably goes wrong. And I think that like the two perfect examples of that. When was the last time a field goal got blocked? And have you ever seen a player suffer such a horrendous injury running on the field? That I couldn't believe that when I saw Dre Greenlaw and the injury he got, and like even they showed video. Mahomes was looking at it going, "Hey, he's down," and Shanahan's reaction for did he get injured running on the field? Like there's some sort of a curse just over Shanahan at the moment because my God, talk about bad luck.
Yeah, Simon, get you in there. Some initial thoughts.
Yeah, I think Danny's on the ball there. Like Kansas, I think Kansas were kept in the game in the first half by San Francisco just not being able to execute. As Danny mentioned, that desperate injury that Greenlaw had, and then Kansas picking out his replacement to absolutely harass for the rest of the game. Look, it's you mentioned Shannon. I think Shannon has PTSD since the Atlanta Super Bowl loss in 2018. I just think, like, I know he wasn't head coach, but he was in Matt Ryan's ear, and like I think he literally still hasn't got over it. He's lost 2 Super Bowls now as a head coach, and like the one a couple of years ago, last Sunday night, I just think that was there for the taking. Mm-hmm. This was far from a vintage Kansas group. And look, it's look, fair play to them there. Mahomes is unbelievable, and backing against him is probably a stupid thing to do. But like, I think this is an example of where San Fran could have picked up a Super Bowl, and to start all over again next year might be difficult.
Yeah, because I mean, we can go down through the first half, guys. I mean, defense is certainly on top, but I mean, that opening drive from San Francisco looked very impressive. And I know myself and you, Simon, were kind of WhatsApping during that drive, and like they were running the football at will, and then the fumble here, Danny. I think it's a big point, particularly in the start of the contest. I mean, give Kansas City a bit of a lifeline here.
Yeah, I mean, it killed off early momentum, and like again, momentum's it's a tired cliche, but it really is. Like if they had gotten that touchdown with the way the rest of the half went as well. And defense definitely, like defense is basically just rules this game in a nutshell. You look at Mahomes in just throughout, like even the one big play in the first half was immediately followed up with a fumble on the Kansas City side of things from Pacheco. But like the Niners defense shut down Mahomes for almost all of the 4 quarters, and the only way they got back into the game was on the back of a special teams error. And like hearing the news yesterday, or when I saw it on X as it's called now, when I saw the news that the defensive coordinator Steve Wilkes had been sacked, I just went, I couldn't believe it initially. And like even hearing kind of, you're listening to some of the big US networks and channels, all of them are just kind of in shock in terms of all the people who should have their neck on the line. It wasn't the defensive coordinator. If anything, like they were saying, why does Shanahan still have his job? And there's this really weird narrative in terms of there are certain coaches who can basically, they fail up because Wilkes, that defense shut down the Chiefs for nearly those 4 quarters, and only for that screwed up the fumbles kick. Like they were on their way to winning that Super Bowl. I mean, Mahomes didn't get the crucial scores until the end of the game as well. So Yeah, I think Shanahan's got it. This is a big one on Shanahan from the point of view of, like, you can't blame the DC. Like I sent you on the link earlier, Mark. Yesterday he was saying all the coaches are going to return, and yesterday they sacked their defensive coordinator. It's a terrible look for him and for the 49ers.
Bosa came out with some strange comments after the game with San Francisco press in terms of the run game reads and stuff like that on Mahomes. I mean, certainly they would have prepared, and as you say, Danny, quite rightly, they kind of negated Mahomes. But Simon, I mean, defensive coach getting a sack here, it's kind of
he's least responsible.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
Do you know, it's funny, and like we spoke about earlier on the year, you know, as far as I know, like from a stats point of view, they were fairly high up there. You know, they were ranked.
They were third.
Yeah, were they third overall? Was it 8?
Yeah, overall, I think for the entire season they were third. They did concede. I looked at some of the stats. They compared regular season to postseason, but like they were up against the Packers and the Lions, who were very offensive minded, and so were the Niners. But yeah, they were third overall kind of throughout the entire season, which makes it even more perplexing.
Yeah, I was the same as yourselves. I was kind of half surprised when Wilkes got the road. At the same time, I was just looking through a couple of San Francisco 49ers, you know, fan groups and Facebook and that. You know, it was kind of mixed. There was a few of them that, you know, I'd say it was kind of 50-50. That's a lot of people were happy enough to see him go. That there was games during the season, I think against the Vikings, the last play in first half was pointed out as one of them. That, you know, it possibly was, you know, it was possibly not the biggest surprise that he got the sack. Do you know what I actually thought? Let's say, I know he's after falling on his sword now as the defensive coordinator, but I actually think it was possibly a worse sign of how San Francisco have tried to build their roster. Do you know, they spent an awful lot of money on their defensive line, and their linebacker position, you saw the fall off between, like, Greenlaw goes down, Oren Burks comes in and gets absolutely hammered. And, you know, like, it's grand having, you know, your first choice players. And obviously there's going to be a small bit, like you see it every week, you know, a corner goes down and the replacement is who they throw the ball to the very next play, you know. But I think it's, you know, for a Super Bowl team, you know, an NFC championship team, you know, you don't expect there to be that much of a fall off. And I say, you know, fair enough, you know, sack your defensive coordinator. But like, if you look at the overall scheme of things, is it going beyond Shanahan that is covering his backside here? You know, if you're looking at the front office, who, rather than, you know, putting up their own hand and saying there's too much of a fall off here between our number one linebackers and our number two linebackers, who are going to get absolutely targeted for the remainder of the game, you know, are they just kind of covering up for themselves? Like, going back to what you were saying, Mark, I think, like, that first drive, like, San Francisco came up with so much energy and there's so much misdirection in what they were doing in the backfield. And like Tony Romo even said it in commentary, that, like, you literally, how can you defend against this? Because it could be coming from any one of 3 or 4 places. And I think there was a complete opposite then in the second half when they came out. They came out in the second half, and if you even saw, like, they seemed to be almost struggling to get up to the offensive line. They were nearly sprint after what had gone on in the first half. And it was almost like they had played reasonably well offensively in the first half. We're doing all these misdirections, all this movement, and there's almost like we're still only up 7 points at half time, and I think they were nearly beaten coming out into the field coming into the second half.
Yeah, because I mean, look, Kansas City Chiefs, they were 3-and-out, you know, quite a bit of that first half. I suppose one of the other narratives that take is the story of the field goal kickers here, Danny. I mean, you had Jake Moody hitting a 53-meter field goal, longest in Super Bowl history, and then obviously Butker. I know Mahomes, Kelsey, Hardiman Jr., they're all getting applauded, but certainly I think Butker here has to have an enormous credit here, because he really did keep Kansas City and the Chiefs really in the game for long periods.
Although it was funny, kind of, the Niners have the record for the longest field goal, and it lasts how many hours? Like, it's up all the luck they have as well. But it's kind of it's especially kind of in Super Bowl games as well. Like, you go back to the last dynasty, and what was that built on? It was built on Adam Vinatieri's field goals in the crucial, like, even the one that sealed that dynasty. against the Eagles, they were 10 points up, but his kick ended up being the crucial, and he's Hall of Fame bound. He will be, like, he's going to be nominated for it next year. But yeah, I mean, the field goal kickers, it's one job they have to do, and we'll be chatting about the Irish lads who are currently over trying to play their trade there. But it's a crucial job that they have to do, and it was a really weird game from that perspective in terms of, like, if you'd gone into this and said Mahomes will have one touchdown in regulation and the rest of it will be kicking, like, not many people would believe you from that point of view. But, like, even the fact that the Niners, the blocked field goal, the last blocked field goal I can think of was at Minkah Fitzpatrick blocking against the Bengals 2 years, the first game of the season. And the only reason I remember it is because it was an acid trip of a game as a Steelers fan. Like, after it, there was games after it and I had to switch them off because I was so emotionally exhausted from the blocked field goal, the missed field goal in front by the Bengals, the field goal from the Steelers that hit the post, and then there was finally a kick. But yeah, the kicker, and like, to have a blocked field goal, and of all games for the specials teams to collapse for the Niners, it had to be, like, again, they get that. The Chiefs had to go for a 2 point. They didn't have to because of it. Like, it was really, like, if you're looking at plots and the way that a game is going to play out, a lot of stuff, you would have had some real interesting bingo cards because a lot of things happened that not many people would have predicted. But yeah, the kicking was, in the end, it was the thing that kept the Chiefs in it. And Mahomes was eventually able to get them into the game. And Travis Kelce was finally able to get into the game. Obviously, he had one catch in that first half, nearly concussed his coach. But he got into the game and he played a crucial part. Like, the final drive, he set it up perfectly for them. And, like, he ended up getting the most in terms of receiving yards. And that's 3 Super Bowls for him. And, like, if he was to retire, it's not looking like he will. But if he was to retire, he'll be up there with Gronk as the all-time great tight end as well in the sport.
Yeah, Simon, get you back in there. I mean, talking about Butker here, but I mean, on the 49ers side, Jennings had a very prominent game, particularly receptions-wise, the 2 touchdowns. One from McCaffrey and also one from Purdy, who was solid. Let's be brutally honest there. Yeah, just an awful lot of things were conspiring for Simon on San Francisco in that second half. I mean, Greenlaw, we've talked about the Achilles. Samuel then has a bit of a hamstring twig. Kettle, who I thought might have had a prominent role here.
2 for 4.
Super 4. So, I mean, look, to be perfectly fair here, Simon, you know, there was struggles here. Do you feel this was, I think you've alluded to it here, but injuries certainly were a bit of a factor here for...
Look, injuries were a factor, but look, I go back to it again. After half time, I think they came out a beaten team. I think Shannon had gone back into his box. Like, in the second half, if you're being the plays calls that he was making, like, McCaffrey touched the ball twice in the third quarter. It made no sense, you know. Any joy that they had in the first half was in the back of his runs. I thought it put pressure. Like, he threw a bit on first down in the third quarter, and I think it put pressure on Purdy straight away because most of those throws on first down were incomplete, and all of a sudden then you're looking at 2nd and 10, and that's not where you want to be with Purdy. I think Purdy comes into his own when you have 4 yards, and you have numerous ways of making it up. To be honest, particularly in the third quarter and to a certain degree in the fourth quarter, I think it looked like Shannon had lost all faith in Purdy. I think he'd lost total faith in McCaffrey. Brandon Ayuk, who I mentioned here before and was very, very important in the NFC Championship game for them. Brandon Ayuk, I think had he 3 targets all day. Like, it was absolutely nonsense. So, like, going back to your point about Jennings, I think Jennings, obviously he did come into the game, but it was almost as if that Shannon had lost so much faith in his main playmakers, Kettle as well. He'd lost so much faith in his main playmakers and his ability to get them open, that his go-to planned in was who else might be around the place that will be open, and that's where Jennings came into his game plan. I think it looked totally. As I say, I think still in his head since 2018, and look, to be honest with you, at the end of the game, like, I think Shannon, I know he's not on the defensive side of the ball, but the San Francisco's last drive, where they got stuffed on, was it a 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6? McDuffie came in and blocked Jennings actually again on a sharp reception. Like, sure, Stevie Wonder could see that play coming. They weren't going to leave him. They weren't going to leave Purdy pick them off for 6 yards and ice the clock. They would have been in a position then that they could have iced it. They were inside the 2-minute warning, and they could have kicked the field goal to win. It was 16-all at that stage. One thing I was awful or disappointed with as well, in overtime, And I know, look, they're talking about analytics and he shouldn't have taken the ball and all that kind of crack. But in overtime, when they had a third and was at 4, they're at the very, very end of overtime and their drive. They had a third and 4. I can't understand the mindset that, look, fair enough, they didn't make the completion, but they didn't go for it in 4th down. Like, they would have needed some kind of stop anyway. Like, do you know what if you have McCaffrey and you have the Juice, the full back in front of you, if you have the two of them, surely be to God, you say to yourself, right, if I'm at 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, I have 2 downs to get a 1st down here, and go for your touchdown. Because like it was as clear as day that if Kansas got the ball back, they were going to get a touchdown at the other end of the field. They were very lucky or San Fran were very lucky that time ran out on them in the first or in regular time, because I'd say they would have gotten a touchdown in their field position and the game could have been finished in regular time. So, if Dan Campbell was there, I think Dan Campbell would have been going for those. Unfortunately, he wasn't there. But I think a good way to summarize what happened in San Francisco overall is I think Kyle Shanahan needs to gain back his balls, to be honest with you.
Yeah, like Danny, I mean, some of the calls right down the stretch there from the 49ers were fairly baffling, I would say. And in overtime, would you have taken the ball?
It's interesting the amount of analysis there's been around it. Like, they even said that when they made the toss and he said we're going to take it, like apparently even the refs were like, do you really, like, it's almost like, are you sure about that now? Do you want it? Like, it's obviously, do you want to take this price instead? And even like they said, Mahomes is very often, he's not flustered in terms of body language, but even he had a look on his face of what? And it sounds like kind of for all the reputation around preparation and that, like even the players at the sideline from the Niners side, they were saying, did you know that was a rule? Oh, no, we didn't know. And like, that's a pretty big error to make in the biggest game of the year. So like, yeah, it just sounds like there's so much that the Niners they literally did drop the ball from that point of view. And like they said, like, I mean, Mahomes, it was set up for him. It was perfect from that point of view. Like, I saw somebody, it was a figure, it was up online that, it was kind of, there's been 125 drives in the 4th quarter, and it went to kind of the stats. Was it Brady? He was 5 for 11. Drew Brees was 3 for 6. Patrick Mahomes, he's 7 for 7. Like, he's the last player. He's like Johnny Wilkinson in front of the goalposts. He's the last quarterback on planet Earth you want to have driving against you with the game on the line, and they did that. And it's, yeah, if I'm the Niners organization, I would be sick at the way that game has gone. And like there's serious questions from their point of view. The one thing that they're fortunate with is Brock Purdy doesn't get his big boy contract for another year, so they can keep a nice bit of that core together. But like, is there trauma they're suffering from this? Because when you consider between them and like the Chiefs, they've nearly played an extra season in terms of those additional playoff games. So like, how many times, like similar to the Bills, how many times can you get to the big game and choke? Because that's what they did.
And it's very like not San Francisco 49ers, like
Very
historically.
Kyle Shanahan though.
Yes, yeah, that's true. But like, you see Jerry Rice at the start, Joe Montana, Tommy Taylor, these guys got the job done back then. But this group, I don't know, Simon, it seems like there could be a bit of a hangover effect next season. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it, like, you just don't know, but like it strikes me as a situation that could get very sour very quick there. Like Ayuk and his brother were already on social media giving out about, how much ball he got and so on. His brother was even throwing up, I think, pictures of the Raiders, crest and all that kind of crap.
God, why go there?
Yeah, well, they might like their few days in Vegas then.
There you go.
Do you think Purdy's going to get paid? I kind of, when you look through their team, and like there doesn't seem to be that many weaknesses. Obviously, we've mentioned linebacker, but when you look through their team, say offensively, he's going to blame someone, and I wonder if they're going to blame like some of Purdy's. I know Purdy was fairly efficient and so on, but like particularly in the 3rd quarter, he wasn't great, and he did miss some fairly wide open catches. I'm just wondering, like, I don't know, will they go out to try and pick someone up in free agency? But I wonder if a quarterback fell to them in the draft, would they think about it?
There is an option there, and like they do have the cap space available. Like, I mean, granted, their history in the drafts as well when it comes to quarterbacks hasn't been very good. Like, I mean, you're looking at this summer and some of the quarterbacks available. Is there someone, like, do they just need somebody who gets the job done? Like, and I get the feeling like you're seeing Kirk Cousins being available, but does he fall kind of under the Alex Smith mold in terms of he was there with the Niners and kind of he did a job for them, but did he do enough? And yeah, I think again for them as for everybody else, quarterback's the big question. I mean, it'd be ballsy if they did, but from the sounds of it, they've said that Purdy is he is the quarterback that they've chosen, but even linking there with Shanahan, he's like historically he's not noted for developing quarterbacks either. So it is a big question they have to answer.
Yeah. Like you couldn't see them giving Purdy. You couldn't see them giving 40 million. Do you know, like I know
well, Daniel Jones got 40 million, so that's anything's possible in that case.
Yeah. There's the market right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's but I think the 49ers front office, and Shanahan, I mean, some of the discussions that have been going on this week, and I'd said it'll continue into the next few weeks. I mean, it's video nasty stuff really, guys, isn't it? Going into overtime and stuff. But look, let's switch to Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes here. I mean, you set it up nicely here, Danny, in terms of it would set up for him to be that ESPN, the man, documentary. And I think an awful lot of plaudits has gone to him, particularly with his kind of play calling, but also his running ability here as well to get himself out of a few log jams, particularly third and 5. There was a fourth down as well. When 49ers weren't taking risks, Kansas City were kind of literally embracing it. And I suppose, Simon, what can you say about Mahomes? He gets it done down the stretch.
Yeah, I love Mahomes. The first time I saw Mahomes was the day after Thanksgiving in 2016. It was the year before he was drafted. And I'd watch a bit of college football, but I wouldn't watch an awful lot of it. But it was on, like, there was kind of a slate of a couple of games on Black Friday, and I watched one of them. Can't remember who they were playing, but he had this ridiculous game. Like, he picked up a ball, he threw an 80-yard touchdown. The next drive he threw an 81-yard touchdown. It was absolutely ridiculous. And I was saying to myself, geez, this fella looks unreal. And I've been doing a bit of reading up on the Kansas general manager during the week, a fella called Veach. He came over with Andy Reid from Philly, and he's kind of worked up his way to general manager position with Kansas. And basically, he would have been in front office or been general manager position just directly after that draft. And like Reid speaks about how that when Mahomes was a freshman in college, the Veach was coming to him with videotapes saying, "This is the best I've ever seen," and like Mahomes has seriously, returned on that promise. Got an ideal situation there, got his year behind Smith, sitting, learning, got his chance to learn the whole offensive scheme there. And Reid obviously is an absolutely fantastic, I'd say, kind of leader and looks after all, his quarterbacks and so on. Mahomes is brilliant. Like, he had 333 yards the other day, but like what I actually think was the most important part was he got 66 yards on the ground. Like, when Mahomes ran with the ball the other day, it was game-changing position every time that he nearly ran, and put them in position. Like, obviously he has his wide receivers. It's gas to think though that Valdez-Scantling has 2 Super Bowl rings now. At the same time, when he was with Green Bay, you had what's his name across the other side of him. Like the two of them.
Devontae Adams.
Yeah, Adams. Yeah. Like, if you were saying to yourself, Devontae Adams would be at this stage in his career with no Super Bowl rings, and Valdez-Scantling at the other side, just a kind of a speed merchant who happens to have what turns out an average enough pair of hands in him, and he has 2 Super Bowl rings. It's absolutely gas. But like I from what I read during the day, Mahomes, like, he's a team player as well. He's on about restructuring the contract again next year. So you restructure the contract there, all of a sudden Kansas can bring in 1 or 2 playmakers. There's some very tasty wide receivers hitting the free agency market. If you throw in a Mike Evans there on top of him, or a T Higgins, all of a sudden, Kansas could be going for the 3 pieces they're saying stateside.
Yeah, like, Danny, I mean, we won't go into it in terms of celebrations, but what Mahomes did say, we're not going anywhere. We're not finished here by a long way. And the fact that he is looking to restructure the contract feels a bit Tom Brady-esque in New England Patriots. Every year, there was always that bumper negotiation, but it was always restructured. They always got 1 or 2 good free agency signings. I suppose, Danny, Kansas City are the barometer here, and they continue to be the standard bearer next season.
Oh yeah, they are. I mean, 6 AFCs, they've been in 4 Super Bowls. They're the new. Who would have thought we'd only be waiting a year or two for another bloody dynasty? But that they've kind of come along. They've replaced the Patriots, and again, like the Patriots have shown that template, as you highlighted, or even like Brady has shown the template when he went to Tampa Bay. Players will be willing to go to Kansas City even if they're not getting the big money, because they know at the very least they're getting into probably a championship game, so they will look at it from that standpoint. Like a lot of talk before the Super Bowl was, will Andy Reid be retiring? It sure as hell doesn't look like that now. Is Travis Kelce going to be retiring? It doesn't look like that now. Like when you're looking at the Chiefs, like the wide receiver core, they're definitely they're going to be upgrading on that. And it also sounds like probably the most important signing that there was for the Chiefs was when Chris Jones's contract, the negotiations, when that finally got sorted, because he made Purdy, like just linking him with Purdy, he made Purdy's life a living hell. He only had about 2 seconds in the pocket in order to do things from there. So it even sounds like Jones may be staying. Like this, there's serious echoes of the Patriots of players will be willing to go to Kansas City even if they're not getting paid what they think they should be, because they know there's a very good chance that they're going to come out on the other side with a ring. And like you mentioned, Simon, some of the wide receivers coming onto the market, they're very and yeah, kind of when you consider the wide receiving core they basically didn't have this year and they still won. Like that just shows you if Mahomes has a number one receiver he can throw to, be it Evans, be it Higgins, like they could, like their offense could be another level. And like this was the youngest defense in the league this year. Youngest, I mean, good God, and they were one of the best in the league as well. So they seem to have a lot going forward from that point of view. And yeah, I think they will do what Brady did. People are going to join the program because of what him and Reid can give you in terms of rings at the end of it.
Oh, completely. And look, Simon, Andy Reid, what can you say about him? He's had a stellar career, even for the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, he was always well respected in the NFL family. But I mean, the 3 Super Bowls now. I mean, a coach that has 100 game wins for 2 franchises. I mean, this guy just seems to be a complete father figure to the players in this locker room. And look, I think the Travis Kelce, Andy Reid kind of shot that was kind of literally portrayed more than Taylor Swift during the first half. I mean, to be fair to Andy Reid, I think, you know, an outstanding coach here, and kept his cool and composure. And what more can be said about the guy?
I suppose when you hear him speaking to the players and how the players speak of him, even though like he's years and years older than him, I suppose his main factors he can somehow relate to them, okay, and that they'll die on the field for him, you know. I've watched his interview there last year. He did an interview on the New Heights podcast with the 2 Kelce brothers, and he actually drafted. He was in Philly when Jason was drafted into Philly, and he was like obviously in Kansas when Travis came in there, and like he's how those 2 brothers speak of him, like it is like literally a second father figure, you know. And even the way that, you know, like I know an awful lot was made, he probably shouldn't have bumped him and so on the sideline, but I know an awful lot was made about the incident with Travis on the sideline the last day. But I think that's more of a factor because of this kind of almost like this family feel, you know, and this kind of you know, players aren't afraid to approach him. Whereas, like, you never see something like that with Belichick, who was a totally different type of management style.
Oh,
you know?
God, can you imagine
Gronk doing that to me?
Kicked out man.
But no, do you know, like, and like I know there's different types of management styles, leadership styles, and so on. But yeah, I think Reid he comes across as a fantastic fella. Do you know, another factor, like something struck me when they were coming out at the start of the game the last day, San Fran came out with their beat boxes and their, you know, all the players, you know, your personalities, your Trent Williams, your Debo out in front and so on. Whereas what struck me was when Kansas were coming out, Reid was walking, almost stumbling out in front of all these 6 foot whatever they are pro athletes ready to go, but he was the father figure out in front of them when they were walking out that tunnel, you know. Shanahan came out probably with his laptop 5 minutes behind everyone else, you know. But yeah, Reid is a fantastic fella, and like I mentioned the last day that we spoke, that I thought that retirement could be on the door, but and I think it possibly was, but like he's not going to leave now when there's the chance of this 3-piece occurring, you know, and to go down in, like, he's already going to go down, like he's going to be a Hall of Famer and so on. But you know, to do something as well that hasn't really been done before. You know, it would be an amazing feat for him. So yeah, big fan of Andy Reid, and look, hopefully we'll have him for another few years anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we won't touch on it, but I think what happened in Kansas yesterday could galvanise the city as well and the franchise. So to be fair to Tom Brady as well, has been very outspoken on the league this season as well. He's really criticised in terms of the consistency, and he's really called 3 teams out of it. Kansas City and Philadelphia were the top 2 there. So I think if you're Andy Reid or anyone else prospectively wanting to join that ball club, if Andy Reid is your head coach, I think you're really looking for your agent to do a magnificent job and get you into that franchise as soon as possible. Look, guys, 25-22, I mean, overtime win for Kansas. I mean, look, they've cemented their legacy and dynasty here. Massive congratulations to them. I suppose, guys, can we move on? I mean, we're kind of into combine season in the NFL, and we have a bit of Irish interest with Mark Jackson, Rory Beggan, Dara Leader, Charlie Smith, and also there was the Lewis Rees-Sammet left field move as well from Wales. I suppose, guys, from an Ireland perspective, there's an exciting times here, Danny.
Yeah, no, definitely. Actually, Tyg Leader, he's been the one coordinator from the Irish perspective. I actually interviewed him before, and we nerded out talking about kicking for an hour straight. But yeah, no, like it's like even there's video if you check up, like he's shown Rory Beggan kicking from 65 yards, and like that skill, like there's a lot of talking around. Like, I mean, we're made for it between rugby, Gaelic football, like between all the sports we play. Like even one of the players that they managed to get over in the college system when he was just doing training, and their punter went down injured, and they asked him, "Could you punt?" And he was like, yeah. It's like no problem. Like you're looking at it from the point of view, like the 4 Irish who were on that program, they're all kickers, and it makes perfect sense because I think I mentioned to you even before we started live here, I wish this was around 20 years ago because I would have gone over to the US because I could kick. Like it was just kick or punt. We're made for it, and like it's definitely there's great opportunities there for players in the college system. You get your scholarship. You don't need to worry. Like Tiggs highlighted some of the Irish who are already over there, and he said it's life-changing. And all they have to do is kick a bloody ball. They don't have to be hit. Well, they're smart, but they don't have to be hit. Like they have to kick a ball at most 10 times. Like it's really doing a great job in terms of spreading the word about the sport too. And at least from the Irish standpoint, it hasn't been as traumatic as the Rees-Sammet going to the US and going for the NFL Combine because. Like you could see Welsh fans were in complete shock around it because he was the poster boy. Like even when the Netflix series went out, they nearly had to re-edit it because nearly every player featured is no longer playing for their country.
Facts. I mean, Simon gets you in there as well. I mean, granted to the Irish guys, they're 3 of them are going for kicker positions, and obviously Dara Leader is going for the punting role. But I mean, even from a Rees-Sammet perspective, like I mean, some of the press clips, he was like, "Am I a wide receiver? Am I a running back? I'm not quite sure." And I'm kind of like, "Well, you're going into a combine.
Yeah,
that's not good. Like you need to be deciding here." And I mean, look, these combines are vicious in terms of the questioning, the interviews, the plays that you have to memorize. I mean, Simon, this is a pretty daunting kind of challenge for these guys.
It is, yeah. I suppose the main advantage that the European guys and I suppose there's Australians and so on going to this is that because of the NFL, this international program, they're getting an extra roster spot for the practice squad for one of these players, and it's all 32 teams can bring one of these players in, and I suppose dependent on needs, they might look at someone like Rees-Sammet and say to themselves, "Do you know what? We could use this as a project player." Take him in the practice squad for a few years and see how it goes. Like the practice squad, general kind of wages, you're probably getting about 10 grand a week, on a good practice squad contract for the regular season. Like that'll keep him happy enough over there, and I'd imagine someone will take a punt on him. Regarding the 4 Irish lads, I to be honest, I think even though Beggan looked very impressive kicking that gesture and Leader, I think their age profile will probably go against them. So you're looking at 2 lads that are gone over the 30 mark. I think that's going to be too old. Like, I suppose the best example, like, the Saints punter this year, Headley, he's an Australian lad, very interesting character. But he came into the league at 30 years of age. But he had done nearly 5 years in the collegiate system over in the US. He finished up in Miami, the Hurricanes. And so he had gone through the college system. And I suppose he kind of had, the kicking smarts or the game smarts, And I wonder is it going to come against the older Irish lads. I'd give Jackson Smith a better chance, but I'd give them a better chance if they maybe came in via the college route. If this exposure they're getting from this if there's a possibility that someone will come in, someone will come in and give them a scholarship and try and come in that way. I know a guy, but I don't know him. I know of him that's been trying to make it as an American or a kicker over in America for the last 3 years. He's a friend of a friend, but he's gotten very, very close to making, being seen at these kind of combines and these kind of trials and so on. But he says when it comes down to it, if there's a decision between an Irish fella coming over there that might have all the talent in the world and an American who's been playing it since he was 6, that the scouts and so on will always go for the lad that's been playing the game the whole time. And I don't know, will that come against the older Irish fellas? But definitely Jackson and Smith, as I said, if this exposure gets them into the college system, even if they only played 2-3 years in college, you mentioned Danny Tig Leader. As far as I know, he's a couple of players that are over there.
Yep, there's a few in the collegiate system already.
Yeah, like Jackson Smith were only bought around the 20 mark. They're plenty young enough to give it a year or two. It's hard to see. It's hard to see any of the franchises going away, almost wasting a free roster spot on a kicker when they can be bringing in someone like Rhys Emmett and possibly try and nurture them over the next 2-3 years and see where that goes. So yeah, hopefully they'll get on right and hopefully they'll give a good representation of themselves. But I doubt the older lads. I doubt any of the kickers will make the roster spot. But look, here's hoping.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Florida at the moment anyway, and I mean, some social media videos have been looking quite good as well. So look, best of luck to the guys anyway. It's enormous move to kind of put yourself out there, particularly on a combine like this. So I mean, best of luck to the guys, and let's hope for some positive news there in the next few weeks. I suppose, guys, can we look at free agency? I think you've touched upon it there a little bit in terms of wide receiver core. I'll throw you 2 names here, Kirk Cousins and Ryan Tannehill here. Where do you think likely they're going to be plying their trade next season, Danny?
Well, Cousins has been linked with Pittsburgh, so I'm not lying. I've actually checked up Sports Illustrated, apparently Cousins' group already said he'd be open to a move there. Now, as to whether the Steelers can afford in terms of what his cap hit would be is a completely different story. And it's weird, both him and Tannehill have been linked. Tannehill because of the obvious coaching link. But it's even Justin Fields weirdly has been linked with them as well in terms of if the Steelers were to send the Bears a good enough selection in terms of trading. But with Cousins, he's kind of got his pick because there are going to be a lot of teams out there who will want a quarterback like him. If he went to Pittsburgh, I'd be delighted. I'm just being selfish there because he has been genuinely linked with them. So it wouldn't surprise me if either of him or Tannehill do actually end up at the Steelers. And aside from that, I haven't really been following anything else because I'm still laughing at thinking that those two could be there. And again, it's kind of linking back to Kenny Pickett from the point of view of he does need competition because they are moving quarterbacks out as is. Like Mitch Trubisky, when we mentioned Mahomes, both of them were the same draft. He was drafted ahead, is going to be the most famous what could have been for the Bears. But I wouldn't be surprised if either of those two actually does end up in Pittsburgh. They're even saying here on PFF that Cousins, the biggest comparison is Phil Rivers when he left and was with the Colts. So I really wouldn't be surprised if he does end up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Simon, get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think Tannehill will end up in Pittsburgh, Danny. I think the Arthur Smith
crap
there. I think the Arthur Smith connection there will do the job. The Arthur Smith offense, who's going to have a big year next year is Najee Harris. It's like the Arthur Smith offense is all ground and pound, and I'd say you're going to be looking at all you want as a game manager. Tannehill had a good year a couple of years ago. Do you remember the year they got to the playoffs? So I wouldn't be too surprised now at all to see Tannehill there. I don't know. I think Cousins could end up staying in Minnesota if they can figure some way of paying him. The early season kind of talk was, or early off season talk was that he was kind of trending towards staying there. His family are settled and all that kind of crack. So I think Cousins. Now obviously Cousins is a very, very good quarterback. So where he goes, God only knows. I can't see him. I can't see him going to a rebuild project or anything like that. I can't.
No, not that old.
No. I think he'd be perfectly happy. He has Justin Jefferson to throw the ball to there in Minnesota. I think he'd be foolish to move on. They have Hawkinson as well to tight end. So if they make him any kind of a reasonable, he's his money made. So if they give him any kind of a reasonable offer, I could see him staying there. I I'm interested to see what happens with Baker Mayfield. I think Mayfield will want to stay in Tampa Bay. But as I said there a few weeks ago, like if Mayfield, if he gets paid, Mike Evans is going somewhere else, and there's an awful lot of suitors for Mike Evans as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that I suppose, finishes up.
Yeah, absolutely. No, going to be an exciting free agency market, particularly with quarterbacks. I think plenty of pass rushers as well have been kind of catching the eye as well. Definitely the likes of Hunters and Reddick as well. So all to play for. I suppose, guys, before we go, end of season thoughts anyway. I mean, another season down in the NFL. What's one highlight and maybe a hope for next season, Danny?
I suppose from a highlights perspective, you could nearly say the Lions-Niners game just in terms of the sheer drama of it. And I chatted with someone last week. He's a Niners fan. He was at the NFC game. Like, I could just imagine the atmosphere in the stadium when their version of the Immaculate Reception happened. So definitely that would be a highlight just in terms of just how insane that game was and kind of flipping it. The Chiefs-Ravens was so fascinating to watch from a defensive standpoint. So the two championship games, I think, really did stand out this year. The rest of the playoffs, actually, no, the highlight for me is the Packers-Cowboys game. Sorry, I love seeing anytime the Cowboys. It was going to happen, but I didn't expect it to be so spectacular. So that will be my highlight for the season.
Yeah, Simon, get you in there.
Highlight for the season. Jesus, what could I say for that? I thought the season took an awful long time to get going this year, and I suppose, a personal highlight for me was day one, up in Monday Night Football, and that
first minute
touchdown. Yeah, well, I'd already heard about the last one of that game than the first one was the game, but the return or the punt return touchdown for a walk-off win. That was a big highlight for me. Unfortunately, from a Jets point of view, the season went totally downhill after that. But no, it's as I mentioned before, there was kind of a whole kind of a youth kind of a trend. A whole lot of rookies that stood out. Highlights for me probably Puka having the fantastic season with the Rams, who I think are a team that could go very well again next year. You're looking at your tight end up in Detroit. The Porta are having such a great, rookie season. I'm really looking forward to next year already, even though we've months and months to wait for it. But yeah, overall, I finished. As I said, it started kind of slowly, but I think it finished up a hot enough season.
Yeah, I suppose season highlight for me would be, Kansas City. I mean, they got the job done at the business end, didn't they? But I think Detroit Lions was a great story during the year. Mm-hmm. Just the whole kind of, the uplift that it gave to the whole city of Detroit, Dan Campbell as well, just no nonsense stuff there. And hopefully the hope for next season that maybe we get more competitive teams here. I mean, more consistent performing teams, really. I mean, we probably will have Kansas City there, obviously. Buffalo Bills is the window kind of closing in on them. Philadelphia Eagles, you just never know. But hopefully we may get another one or two teams there, and maybe hopefully New England Patriots. But I doubt it very much.
Hopefully not for the next 2 decades. So.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, to be fair, end of an era with, Pete Carroll and also Bill Belichick gone. So it'll be very interesting to see what Seattle and New England, where those ball clubs evolve. But anyway, guys, I think we've come to the end of the podcast series. I really thoroughly enjoyed this in the last few weeks. Danny, do you want to give yourself a plug there in terms of how people can reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. Probably what was Twitter, now X, is the best from that standpoint. That's where I share most sports stuff. So it's Danny Ed O'Brien, so ED O'Brien. That's the best one to reach out to me from that point of view. So I'll be sharing random stats, funny things, and hopefully Munster will do well this year, and I won't have to give out as much as I usually do. So.
Absolutely, and you do have the sports radio show as well.
Yep. So that's every Saturday. This week it's a football jersey special. I managed to talk to somebody for an hour about that. That's how sad my life is. So
I'll be tuned in. Simon, how can we get in contact with you? Anyone on the podcast?
Still living in a cave until Lismar.
Fair enough. I can be your agent there, Simon. Anyway, you can divert any kind of inquiries to
send on your air code.
Exactly, for sure. But guys, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Like we started this, in January, but look, we might do this from the season start, particularly in August next year. But guys, until Yeah, sure. We'll chat in a few weeks anyway, offline.
Sure.
But anyway, many thanks for your contributions, and yeah, enjoy yourselves.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us on, Mark.
All of it.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.